What's your color? I wanna know. What's your color? I wanna know. I wanna know. I wanna know. I wanna know. I could be red, or I could be yellow. I could be blue, or I could be purple. I could be green or pink or black or white. I could be every color you like.
Welcome to the Zaki Bhika show in the lab where new ideas are born. Today we feature Zunaid Mosam. Zunaid Mosam has been born in Louis III and studied journalism. He wears many hats, from newspaper editor, lecturer, businessman, and also an ANC councillor of the Dorpie in Nalstrom. He also served on various committees and now is pursuing his career in writing. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to our show, Zunaid.
Wa alaikum salam, Zakira, and thank you for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So, Zunaid, we all have stories to tell. I actually wrote a drama series. The Arabic term is called Kulluna Qisas. So, why, according to you, is there a necessity to write or document our stories or to even verbally tell our stories?
Okay. Look, I'm very passionate about writing. I've always been writing poetry. In fact, when I was still in school, I actually wrote out the constitution, my own personal constitution of what South Africa should be like.
Okay.
And I used to write to the Rand Daily Mail when they had various requests for various opinions on particular issues, which also got me into trouble with the police many years ago.
All right.
And currently, I'm pursuing my career in writing. I'm actually a film scriptwriter. I've trained as a film scriptwriter.
Wow, okay.
But COOLIE BANDIET so happened to be my first debut into the writing literary world.
Okay.
So what I do like writing very much is our struggle history. I'm very passionate about our struggle history. I think those stories need to be told in any art form, literature being one of it.
Okay.
For me, I recall, artists that had various plays, in the past. If you think of Cinemali, Rosa Albert, Sarah Essas, You Can't Stop the Revolution. Quite recently, when I say recently, post-1994, a brilliant production by Rajesh Gopi, The Coolie Odyssey.
Yes.
So all those stories capture our struggle history in some way.
Yes.
The other thing is that we need to leave a legacy for the future generation. I mean, the need to understand what our struggle was about. So if you think about something simple as sport.
Yes.
And remember when post 1994, around 1990, when South Africa played India in one of the series, I think it was a test series, I can't recall, but youngsters couldn't understand why we never supported South Africa.
Yes.
I mean, I supported the West Indies, in rugby I supported the All Blacks, and they would ask, but Uncle Zunaid, why don't you support South Africa?
Yes.
And what rings a bell is Hassan Howard's quotation that he says, there can be no normal sport in an abnormal society. And although 1990, everything was bad, we were not in a normal society as yet. We never had that freedom to exercise our vote, or actually, we were still bound by apartheid.
By rules and regulations. Yes.
And our struggle history is a lesson to the future generation that we should not repeat the scourge of apartheid or any form of oppression.
Yes.
They need to learn about it, understand it, internalize it, and realize that many people have suffered for this, for our freedom. When we write stories, readers can, like for instance, COOLIE BANDIET.
Yes.
I've written the story which is in a small dorpy like Nelstroom.
Yes.
So when little youngsters read about it, they understand what we're talking about. If I talk about Joe Slovo Street, where we marched across, into town, they would understand where Joe Slovo Street. So they can resonate with that. If we talk about Ephraim Okhari Stadium, where our marches and our demonstrations started,
place, yes.
they understand stand,
logistics
and can resonate with that,
yes.
right? You know. And for me, one of the very important proverbs is an African proverb that reads, "Until the story of the hunt is told by the lion, the tale of the hunt will always glorify the hunter."
Mm-hmm.
And that is very profound, and it actually, I use it all the time. I've actually used it as a quote in my book.
Okay.
And then I also believe that our stories, every story that we write, adds to the myriad of hues and the intricate on the intricate woven of our tapestry of our history.
Yes.
So I mean, all of us, for instance, I've written quite a few others which I will mention later. Is I take bits and pieces of other people's stories,
yes,
and I sort of weave it into one whole story.
Yes.
So basically, that is
giving a holistic picture.
View picture of it.
Brilliant. I in one of my recent projects, during interviews with Pretoria Legacy Foundation about the history of Marabastad, most of the interviewees' stories came across as happy and joyous moments. Why is it so important to emphasize the struggles that for freedom that we went through?
Okay. My views regarding the struggle our struggle should have on the future generations based on what we ought to achieve, not the current trajectory where we are going. Under the kind of, when younger and future generations read our stories, particularly our struggle narratives,
yes,
it should be a sense of enlightenment to them.
Okay.
Firstly, it should be a lesson, regardless of color, creed, or race. That apartheid was a scourge on humanity.
Yes.
It should give them a sense of purpose. Our struggle should give the youngsters a sense of purpose, a sense of selflessness, and willingness to make a sacrifice. That is lacking currently.
Okay.
Because what role models do we have out there? If I go into the townships and I look at the youngsters, I mean, everyone wants to own a smart car, dress well, but they must understand also, and with all the corruption, and the looting that's happening, and the manner in which our leaders are presenting themselves.
Yes. So Zunaid, about Nalstrom, I'm familiar with it because my in-laws are actually from there. But once again, I've only heard joyous stories about the achar factory and the candle making factory. Tell me about the challenges that you faced being the only Indian person involved in a political struggle in Nalstrom.
I was very fortunate that I didn't only work in Nalstrom as an activist. I worked for a while in Durban, or later on in the 90s. I worked in Durban, but I also spent a lot of time in Lenasia,
all right,
where I worked in Roodepoort. So I used to operate in the Bekkersdal, Notlake, Kagiso, Azadville area.
Okay.
So I worked as an activist there, and if I do a comparison to working in a township, one is that we never had that resources. In a township, you didn't have affluent individuals,
yes, that
would provide us, for instance, money for printing
resources,
or
yes,
and other resources. So that was one of the more difficulties. Then the other thing is that I was always followed by the police. But I always made an excuse that I'm visiting someone. So I Uncle Funny Pada, or made some excuse.
Yes, yes.
And the other thing is that when I used to go to court, where a lot of these comrades appeared in court, they were arrested. And at one particular time, I was actually pulled out of the courtroom and asked, "What am I doing there?" And luckily, at that time, I was a freelance journalist.
All right.
And so, and then, even going in the townships, like, they were, for instance, to give out pamphlets. I recall once one of my comrades, Charlie Makoni, was in hospital. So, Comrade Satka Charlie, who's now an ambassador,
yes,
he gave me the pamphlets, and I used to go and give the pamphlets to Charlie Makoni at the hospital, and there's another comrade, Bungi Machiko, would collect it for me, and that is how we had to operate. Because,
so a whole intricate system.
So because I was the only Indian in Mudimole or Nelstrom at that time that operated, as an activist.
Okay.
So it had, it had its setbacks and challenges.
At the moment, Zunaid, our country is in total chaos. My feeling, my personal feeling, and millions of others at the moment. What is your personal opinion or your response to the status quo of South Africa right now?
Zakira, when I think about our country currently, and I think, how do we describe it? And I'll tell you, I use those that were involved in the looting and corruption. For instance, I call it, Zuma's abyss, doldrums of Ace, and Gupta's avarice.
Okay.
That really spells out what our country is right now. And until such time we don't do anything about it, we are going to continue on a decline curve. And the question you ask yourself, that those of us that have fought in the struggle, those that went out of the country, fought in Umkhonto we Sizwe, APLA, all these military organizations, the question we need to ask ourselves, is the trajectory that we are on as a free and democratic country the type of society we envisaged? And I respond to that in my book, COOLIE BANDIET. In the end, like many revolutionary stories, the question arises, do the heroes of the story with fluttering freedom flags hoisted over their shoulders and freedom songs reverberating in the air ride out in the direction of the setting sun to witness a new dawn, or do they capitulate and allow the trajectory of looting and injustice determine their fate? I believe an oppressed people's fate is not dependent on a single revolution, but a series of ongoing mini-revolutions to overcome the pitfalls of history and moments of weakness. The struggle never ends. One can only be hopeful that generations to follow will lift that spear of hope to continue a trajectory of Ubuntu. I am because we are a luta continua. So that is my response. There are lots of things that we need to do. We need to fix the whole governance of our country. Even if Zuma and whoever are taken to court, given a just trial, and donning orange overalls after that, there's a long way we have to go to develop and bring our country to what we envisaged during the struggle. I'm just thinking like a simple thing like local municipalities. We have an option in local municipalities to run those municipalities on our own if the council is not running properly.
Okay.
Putting it under administration is one thing, but that doesn't really deal with the basic, basic needs of our community, the basic services. So we need to even explore that option of taking over the municipalities through a
coup or force.
No. Look, I'm not going to talk. Legally take it. There is legal mechanisms in place within our legal system to do that, and we should use those options. Like for instance, residents' associations, organizations. However, we must ensure that those that we put in responsible of our finances, of our projects, are people that are skilled and that are responsible.
How did we let it get so bad so quickly? Whose responsibility? Are we all responsible? Why didn't we speak up? Was it because silence is an oppression on its own? How did we let it get so bad so quickly?
I think one of the things that we did is that many of us took on over positions and we left a vacuum.
Right.
So we did not. We did not deal with community. We all wanted to take positions. Whether I want to become
name and fame.
Besides name and fame, but take up a position so that we can get something out of it. And we've left this vacuum. So the ANC being the party in government, for instance, many of them have gone to as MPs and MPLs, and so they left this vacuum, as I said. So we need to address that. But we also need, we can't allow political parties to deal with it. We need to deal with it as individuals, as civil society organizations. We need to rise up against this government if it's corrupt. Because if we don't, that last bit of that morsel that has to go into the feet of in the mouth of the poor will be snatched away. Okay. And that's how about it, man.
Zunaid, so your final words regarding or to the people of the country, what is your final words?
I think, we should not be complacent. When we see wrong, we should rise up. Don't leave the injustice or the looting and corruption that's happening to politicians to deal with.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying don't trust all politicians, be a majority of them. I'd like to see one day we do a lifestyle audit on them and see where it leads to.
Okay.
But also, we need to become active citizens in all facets of our society, not just for ourselves. I mean, there's lots of things. For instance, the arts is something that we can look at. Development of our communities. For instance, I've got a foundation called Black Lives Matter Foundation in Mudimulle. So we work with, the daycare centers.
All right.
Just today, this morning, we went and we presented 5 copies of COOLIE BANDIET to Pakhameng High School.
Okay.
And later on, when things are more safer, we'll when things are more safer, we'll do a workshop. So I've got a workshop which calls I wrote my story, because the best way for anyone to learn to write is to write about themselves, because they know who they are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So tell us about the. So Zunaid, you have the book launch tomorrow, COOLIE BANDIET, being launched tomorrow. Tell us about it.
So COOLIE BANDIET is my memoirs of my role as an activist, in Mudimulle and various other cities and towns.
Okay.
It also captures, the disparity in our education system, my early childhood and the disparity in our education system. Okay. Very briefly, it looks at the Group Areas Act, and to a large extent, it looks at my period during solitary confinement, in my detention and solitary confinement, and subsequent, put into a communal cell, and then it also looks at post 90. I mean, our struggle towards 1994 and our post 1994 during the elections, and also how we had our little CODESA under the negotiating forum for the single municipality, and how we eventually took the seat of power and became decision makers in our own town. So that's briefly, what it's all about. Yeah.
Okay. So where is the launch taking place?
The launch will be at ICRA Agencies in Lodium at, I think it's Lodium Plaza.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And what time is the launch?
The launch is at 10:30 tomorrow morning.
Okay. And is it open to the public?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. So catch Zunaid Mosam. You'll be there.
Yes.
You'll be doing a book signing, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Okay. So there you have it. Our great interview with Zunaid Mosam, the COOLIE BANDIET. It's going to be launched tomorrow at ICRA Agencies at the Lodium Plaza, so at 10:30 tomorrow. So if you want to get a signed copy, please come and meet us all there, and I think it's going to be an awesome event. Jazakallah so much for being with us.
Jazakallah, and thank you for having me on your show.